Hello everybody, and welcome back to the Asheville Vedic Astrology YouTube channel, youtube.com/Ryan's Vedic Astrology. Today, once again, we're going to present a video from one of the students of the Asheville Vedic Astrology Apprenticeship Program. Of the 60 plus students that usually start at the beginning of these courses, when they've begun, tend to trickle down to about 10 or 5 students at the very end of the entire program. And those final 10 to 5 individuals are required at the end to write 3 separate 10,000 word papers, contribute 3 separate 1-hour instructional videos on astrology, as well as do a number of donation-based sessions. Now, those students who provide the clearest, most user-friendly videos get posted on this channel. And so today, you've seen her on this channel before. Fiona will be talking about the LAJJITAADI AVASTHAS, and she's come up with some really brilliant visuals to describe these. And she's a life coach as well as an astrologer, and she specifically uses these LAJJITAADI AVASTHAS related to her work as a life coach. So we're going to title this video The Keys to Being a Successful Life Coach and an Astrologer. So I hope you enjoy this video, take your time with it, and if you need a session, please call or contact or email Fiona. She is one of the top students within this program. I've gotten wonderful feedback from the individuals that have worked with her. She also works as a mentor for the Asheville Vedic Astrology Apprenticeship Program. And if you want to learn more about that, it is now offered as a 2-year self-paced course on Teachable. So if you go to Vedic-astrology.teachable.com, you'll find the whole curriculum, and you'll be able to sign up and participate in that. And Fiona is one of the mentors, at least as of this recording. So sit back, get out your notebook, enjoy what Fiona has to say.
Hello everyone, it's Fiona Marks here, and I am back with my second video for the 4th year of the Asheville Vedic Astrology program. And in this video, I'm going to talk to you about the LAJJITAADI AVASTHAS, and a little tongue-in-cheek at the bottom there, I've put the DSM of Vedic Astrology, and I'm referring there to the diagnosis and statistics manual that psychologists, psychiatrists use to understand the complexities of all the crazy things that all of us are experiencing, and that the LAJJITAADI AVASTHAS are a little window into that from a Vedic astrology perspective. So thank you for joining me, and I hope that you're going to enjoy this video today and take some learnings away, and I look forward to all of your comments and feedback. I wanted to begin by giving you a quick update because there's a lot that's happened since the last time we recorded a video. There's a lot that's happened on the planet since the last time, so if you're watching this sometime in the future, I think our last set of assessments was probably due at the beginning of March in 2020, and so since then the whole world has changed a little bit, and we've all been in various versions of lockdowns and mask wearing and hand washing. So there's been a lot of changes for everyone, and I do hope that your family and your loved ones are safe and that your experience has been okay during this time. Putting aside global changes that have taken place since I handed in my second video, I just also want to let you know that I have now a website for you to book and have a reading with me. I know that last time so many of you were kind enough to leave comments and to get in touch with me, and in a convoluted way we're able to go ahead and get readings, but now it's all there for you. That grey button, book a reading, will take you straight to my diary, and you just need to go to fionamarks.com to pull up this screen that you're looking at in the video. So I do hope that I'll get the chance to interact with some of you one-on-one. So let's get straight into the LAJJITAADI AVASTHAS and why I'm making this connection, that there are a diagnosis tool, as I say, tongue-in-cheek, like that psychology manual. So where does this really come from for me? Really, I come to astrology from a life coaching background, fascinated by people, fascinated by change. And when you work as a life coach, at first, it seems to all be about if one can only clearly identify one's goal and work towards it, anything is achievable. And yet after some experience in the field, what becomes equally important, maybe more important, is really what's holding someone back. These obstacles that we create for ourselves, the way we sabotage ourselves, and the patterns we have that block our own effectiveness. So, of course, when I was in second year of the Asheville Vedic Astrology apprenticeship program, and we got to this semester relating to LAJJITAADI AVASTHAS, I was extremely interested, because Vedic astrology really defines these different states that can affect the psychology and effectiveness of a person. And I'm going to show you these in more detail, but just to give you the states, so you've got a bit of a framework to get started from. When a planet is in its happiest place in the sky, we give it the name a proud Avashta. And really, I'm sure you have people in your life, maybe if you're lucky enough you have this in your own life, that there's kind of a sweet spot. There's just a lucky in the zone place in your chart where things flow well and go well, and no matter what comes along, you're able to find, a means to be effective. So I hope that is the case in your chart. Another Avashta in this grouping is when a planet is supported by its friends or by that benevolent, abundant, enormous Jupiter that cannot help but give support. And really this acknowledges that when we're trying to achieve things in life, there can be so much that we can achieve with our friends. That support means a lot and makes life a lot more enjoyable. We call that a delighted Avashta. And another Avashta in this group is when a planet is attacked by its enemies, or when a planet is with Saturn. And either of these situations produce what is called a starved Avashta, where things are more difficult. And when a planet wants to achieve something that's part of its mandate, its area that it's responsible for, actually other planets, these enemies, will get in the way and will create situations that make it much more difficult for that planet to achieve its goals. And you can see there's a slight variation there. There's starved and thirsted. We'll talk about that. A planet can also be in an Avashta when it's with the sun or with a malefic enemy. And this really messes with the integrity of that planet, because this means that you're really, that planet we're speaking of is very close to the sun or a malefic, and cannot, in a way, tell itself apart from that planet. So creates this very frustrating experience of always being driven by someone else's agenda. So whenever you want to do something, actually you end up doing what this other planet wants you to do. So we call that agitated. And then a planet can also be shamed when it's with those pure malefics, Sun, Mars or Saturn, and it also requires a fifth house or a node. So there's a few conditions, but we call it a shamed Avashta. And obviously I find that really fascinating, about when we turn that violence inside to the guilt and the shame, and how that then manifests in the life. So these are the kind of states that we're going to be talking about. And originally, when I planned this video, it was a much smaller topic, but I took the opportunity. As I said, I enjoyed this semester very much in the learning modules, and I had all my notes, and I took the opportunity to put them together for this video, and it just became a bigger and much more integrated project than than I had originally intended. I've been telling Ryan it turned into my opus, and I'm going to share some of that with you today, because for those of us who are visual and need that integrated view, you might find that helpful too. So this is what we're going to be looking at together. Okay, so let's take these states one by one, just to give you an overview in case, like me, you've come to astrology as a total novice. You may never have heard of these states before, so let's just break them down again. When we're talking about the Pradavashta, it's really when the planet is at its best. It's exalted, or it's in its Mula Trikona placement, and it feels in the zone. It knows what it's doing. It knows how to do it. It's effortless. And it feels to me like life is written in the perfect key for the planet to be able to sing. It's just everything is right in that sweet spot of exactly where you can pitch your voice. And how to use it in coaching, it really shows the natural strengths of a person, so that even when one has a proud planet, which, like I said, I hope you do, hope you're lucky enough to have, but of course there's always still going to be adversity in life, and there's still going to be things that come at you from different angles and take resources at different times. But as a coach, when you're working with a client, knowing where their proud planet is can help us draw on that as a strength to solve this problem creatively. Maybe it's not in the area of the proud planet, but just knowing that we have access to that, we can strategize how to include those strengths as a way of working through this obstacle or removing it altogether. So can be very helpful. And this is from the notes that I've put together into an interactive tool that you'll see when I'll try to show it to you a little bit later in the video. But to give you an example, if you think of the moon, when it's exalted or in Mula Trikona, a proud moon, it just likes itself. What a blessing that is in life. And it feels comfortable everywhere. The person can adapt appropriately, which is such a natural quality of the moon, this ability to adapt and at the same time remain fully themselves. And this gives them the ability to truly share with others as a natural byproduct of who they really are. This is just a gift of the moon, sharing itself so openly, and being able to adapt to whatever life brings along. Now, obviously, each planet has its own flavor. I just put this one in here for you to get a feel for how each planet really shines when it's proud. Okay, now we have another Avashta as well that we talked about just before, delighted, which is when a planet is supported by its friends or by Jupiter. And anyone can achieve more in life, and life is just more enjoyable when we're supported by our friends. And this really states the reality that, no chart is perfect, and even good charts or charts with planets that are in good placements can actually be suffering other attacks and other causes that are making them to be weakened. And by reaching out to our friends and drawing on our friends, we can perhaps cobble together the strength that we need to get back up to that 0 or 100%. So in coaching, we can really use it to draw on support from other areas, but also we can help to articulate where that support really could be coming from and brainstorm the people that those friend planets can represent, or the areas of life that they can represent. So it gives us very practical questions to ask about how to find this support, because the nature of the planet will tell us so much about where to look for that support. So very useful in coaching. And as an example, this is when the moon is delighting the sun. The moon is our individual emotional needs, and the sun is the vision and the consistent power. When the sun delights the moon, it makes the moon steady. It brings that steadfastness, that quality, consistent quality that the sun has, and it creates alignment between a person's inspiration and their needs, their emotional needs. So what a happy combination is that? And that, yeah, exactly. At that final point, the moon feels happy with her direction in life when she's supported by the sun. So that's an example of how friends delight each other in LAJJITAADI AVASTHAS. Moving along, we can also have a starved Avashta, and this is when enemy planets are aspecting the planet in question, or when it's with Saturn, and it can mean that these planets kind of thwart the progress and the forward movement of the original planet. What we do have to note is that if this is taking place in a water sign, it makes everything just a little bit easier because water flows and there's just more grease in the cogs, everything can move a little bit better. So if this is taking place in a water sign, we call it thirsted, meaning just a little bit easier than starved. And how we can use this in coaching is that it begins to articulate for the person the underlying patterns of sabotage that are going on when they're making effort in a particular direction. And the act of being able to delineate that, it creates some distance between the person and that behavior or that pattern. And with that distance, it becomes less personal. We just see it outside of ourselves. It's on a piece of paper or it's on the screen. We're calling it the sun or the Saturn or the moon or whatever planets are making up this particular Avashta. And that can give us perspective, both the client and the coach, and it helps us be effective in strategizing because now we've got indicators of what this sabotage really is going to look like and how to be prepared for that and what we're going to do when that comes along. Piggybacking on the previous one, which we were talking about, of being delighted, of getting those friends involved. So, yeah, can be a very useful tool in coaching. And here's one of my favorite. I have to say, there are many really, really interesting starved Avashtas. It's hard to just pick one to show you because they're all so unique, but this is one of my current favorites. This is when Venus is being starved by Saturn. Now, you have to remember these guys are actually friends, so you really need them to be together, conjunct in a sign. But Venus is all about fulfillment in relationships, bringing those two Venus things together. And Saturn is hard work and lack. So when Saturn starves Venus it makes love relationships be associated with hard work. And they tend to lack fulfillment. And the person may have a spouse with either difficult burdens of their own that they're dealing with, or that is affecting the life purpose of the person. And this is it's a tough starvation. Well, in starvation, the name says it all, right? It's going to grind you down eventually. So Saturn's pressure can lead the person to try to escape through Venus types of indulgences, bringing out perhaps the worst in Venus there. And just a quick side note is that it can affect rejuvenation, right? Because Venus is in charge of our DNA as well. Now, like I say, this is one of many, many, many starvations, but you can see that this begins to take the pieces of the puzzle and draw the size and shape of them so that when you're talking with a client, we can see the players on the chessboard and we can begin to get some space and look at how much of this scenario belongs to the person and their psychology and how much belongs out there in the real world, and what the person wants to do with it, knowing that this motivation, this pattern is there in the chart, is going to have the potential to occur over and over or bring itself about, no matter what the scenario is. yeah, so we've got some powerful little hooks and tools to get in there and begin unpicking this starvation. Okay, moving right along, another avastha that we have is agitated, and this is when a planet is in the same sign as the sun or with a malefic enemy. And for me, this is really bringing in some of that kashta element of enemies. You know, they give out their bad vibes, they project it on and away, and it kind of breaks into and breaks apart this original planet so that it's kind of at the same time that it's enmeshed, it's also experiencing this aggression and frustration, and on top of that, not actually being able to achieve much of its own goals, because every time it tries to make a move in any direction, it really gets co-opted by this malefic or the sun's presence. So can be a really frustrating experience, hence the name. How do we use this in coaching or as a coach? You know, sometimes just seeing the pattern laid out on the screen or the piece of paper can be helpful in itself. It's like validating and the person can finally have some words or some chess pieces to be able to describe this intensely frustrating experience. So that can be very helpful. Then we can begin to look at ways to short-circuit this pattern and design practices that intervene with the dynamic. And they might be breath practices or meditation practices, something about the layout of this dynamic. We're going to get a perspective that we can see this would be helpful or this is going to only increase it. Maybe we try to get these agendas aligned with each other. You know, we're using all of our coaching NLP type of framework, reframing skills, but we've got some great definition of the main players. Let's have a look at an example. If it's the sun agitating Saturn, we've got the person's self-esteem from the sun and the sense of lack from Saturn are being agitated together, and they become inseparable in the person's identity. In order to exist, the person must be at their best, but equally in the act of existence, the person is acutely aware of their flaws. You know, it's just bringing both of these two together at the same time. The person's confidence only comes from defending their greatness. The person has to lead in order to feel great. And inside the person, there can be a great deal of doubt and for sure, a lack of peace. So very challenging scenario to experience. And I just had a quick look around in preparing for the video because I wanted to, how can I give a hook to remember this one for you guys? And I just happened to notice, okay, you guys know I live in Portugal, football mad country, happened to notice that Jose Mourinho has this, I believe, in the first house. And he's quite famous for when he went to England, I don't know, probably a decade ago, and started coaching Chelsea. He became known as like the chosen one and the great one. And I think that this is kind of a good representation of this particular avastha, this agitated avastha, because he is obviously the great one. He's an amazing football coach. But at the same time, you can see this intense frustration that he has, and the way that he can turn inner, you know, when things are not going quite as they should. You know, it's tapping into how does this person balance their greatness and their flaws and accept them in a useful and empowering way? So we can maybe think of Jose Mourinho when we think of this avastha. And then it brings us to the final avastha in the series, which is shamed. And this is, we're looking for Sun, Mars or Saturn in the 5th house with the planet that you're concerned about. So you need some other planet that you're interested in there, happening in the 5th house or with one of the eclipse points. So quite a few criteria to get this avastha to work. But then it seems to me that the person begins internalizing this kashta, this violence, or the projecting out of aggression inside themselves into this shame and guilt, which inevitably, like, not only is it eating the person up inside, it inevitably manifests outside as well. And so that shame event occurs publicly. So very much feeling discomfort in the self. How can this be used with a coach and client? Why is this so fascinating for me? Because one, seeing the pattern clearly rather than being in the grip of it, really helpful. Start to get some distance, start to depersonalize it. And then I'm fascinated about this for all of this, for the starved, agitated, shamed, is what is the purpose of these kind of placements? And this is a big question. So maybe it's not something you have directly with your client. It's something that we process and then talk through. But if we think that humanity is evolving and that we're becoming more enlightened, we're still going to have these avasthas. There's still going to be combinations like this that occur in 1,000 years' time, 2,000 years' time, 10,000 years' time. So how is it that we powerfully use these avasthas? What is their real purpose? What spiritually are they teaching us? What are they helping us? How are they helping us to evolve? And I think that we can learn a lot from the wisdom of this placement. So very fascinated when I work with people who have this avastha to learn more about that. Of course, it's really helpful for acceptance of the self, which when we're talking about shame and guilt is a bit of a key. And, powerfully, it gives us the ability to forewarn or anticipate potential situations. And to give you an example of this, like, you may not be able to prevent them. Maybe you can. Let's empower ourselves, but you may not be able to. But if you can see the scenarios that are most likely, the times in your life when these things are most likely to come about, at least, what do they say? Forewarned is forearmed. You're prepared on some level. And I want to share with you, this happened. I've been writing my essay for the second semester as well. And I chose Meghan Markle. And she happens to have this with Mercury. She has the sun shaming Mercury. And you can see here from my interactive tool, which I'm going to show you later, this is just a screenshot of that, so you can read through that. But what I noticed when I was writing it in her chart, she's not my client. I only know what is written in the press about her. So these kind of things, shame, can be, relatively internal to the person. So all I wrote, because it's in her second house, it was relatively early in the essay, I wrote something about, well, given that it's Mercury being shamed by the sun, we've got to imagine it'll be a scenario relating to friends, and that the sun causing this avastha, could be like government, or maybe, taxes, or, a king or a father, And as I was like drawing straws, drawing what could this scenario be for her, I couldn't really find anything. And, one is very tempted, being as she's just been part of the royal family, to think that, the son, the king, it must be the queen, but it just didn't really fit that the queen shaming her friends, I couldn't see anything like that. And then several weeks go by, and lo and behold, one of her dear friends, or very well known as a friend of hers, her stylist Jessica Mulroney, gets wrapped up in this public shaming around Black Lives Matter. So, something, very big and cultural causing this shaming. And so it was really fascinating to me that this is what I mean about, you can work with your clients on scenarios. You don't know them. The client doesn't know when they're coming. But when you lay out who the players are going to be, it gives you a chance to look widely at that and see where the potential pitfalls are. So for this person, if they'd come in, we'd be talking about friends and how friends might cause shame to this person. So I thought that was fascinating. You can read about it on my blog, because I'm putting up the chapters that as I'm writing them. And this all happened in the second house. So the second house is one of the first chapters that went up there. So if you want to read about the dynamics, and we look at the dashas and the timing of why that was possibly triggered, go ahead and have a look at the blog, and that might inspire you as to how these avasthas can be used with our clients. Okay, now this whole first part of the presentation, the video, I've really been directing a little bit at those people like me, novices coming at astrology from a different professional field, wanting to look at how Vedic astrology can be used as a powerful tool when we're working with clients. And now this tipping point of the presentation, I'm moving a little bit more now into the astrological details. So for those of you who are coming at it from the interest of coaching or psychology or how people work, that this might be great and step away, and now you're just, aware of LAJJITAADI avasthas and might look at clients and feel whether you can see some of those things happening. And for those of you who've hung in with me all the way through here, who maybe have more knowledge already, have had some exposure to LAJJITAADI avasthas, this is where we're going to get a bit more ticks and tacks. So, as I explained to you, I love doing this course. However, I'm a very visual learner. I think that's what it must be. I like to see things. I like to see the whole picture so that I can begin to look at patterns and connections. And there's a lot going on with LAJJITAADI avasthas because there's so many planets and there's so many friends and enemies. And it's really beautiful, LAJJITAADI avasthas, because it brings in all of these natural friends that, if you're doing the course, the Asheville Vedic Astrology Apprenticeship, you learn about natural friendships in the second course of the first year. And then when you get to LAJJITAADI avasthas, you realize how important it is, because all of these natural friendships begin to really form the basis of the LAJJITAADI avasthas, but they're quite tailored and unique. So when I was looking at how to put this all together, it really felt to me that LAJJITAADI avasthas reminded me of a visual map that I had seen before. So I'm going to share with you what I've turned it into, and you tell me whether you can see what I saw as well. So here we are. Fiona's periodic table of LAJJITAADI avasthas. There's something about the combinations of all the planets, the friends and natural enemies, and how they impact on each other through LAJJITAADI avasthas that reminds me of chemistry. And I loved chemistry. It's funny, I kind of always thought I would love physics because of the metaphysical part of physics that we all love, the quantum physics thing. But when the further and further I went in school, the more actually it was chemistry that I loved. And perhaps that comes through here. Now, there's a few things for those of you who are already experienced with Vedic astrology, who are already exposed to LAJJITAADI avasthas. There's a few things here that are maybe going to throw you off straight away or that you disagree with straight away. So please have my permission to have your own response to this layout, and maybe it doesn't work for you at all. But let me explain to you some of the choices that I made and see what you think. So I'm imagining those of you who do have already quite a good and deep understanding of Vedic astrology and LAJJITAADI avasthas, first of all, have been completely thrown that on the left column I've got DB, debilitated, because let me share with you that debilitation is not a LAJJITAADI avastha. So right off the bat, the first column, I'm throwing a spanner in the works. And why am I doing that? I think that this has been kind of drummed into my head in my study of astrology, and I'm going to lay this at Ryan's feet, and I hope that he sees this as a compliment and not as a warped moment of my thinking. So if it's warped, I take complete responsibility for it, and if it's helpful, then obviously I'm attributing it to Ryan's great teaching. And that is that one has to remember that these great texts of astrology that we are recapturing and beginning to study deeply and profoundly were songs and verses that were kept alive as best as they could be through the Dark Ages. And in order to keep them at a length when they could be remembered and shared and repeated as a song over and over as a verse, it was important to use words sparingly. And so when a person said white, the very act of defining something as white automatically defined the nature of black. Or when someone defined good, they automatically defined bad. Or when they defined painful, they automatically defined joyful. That in order to be efficient with the use of words, let's just define one side of it, because by default you know that I'm automatically defining the other side of it. And so for this reason, to me, when one speaks about the proud Avashta, one cannot help but notice that obviously there is also going to be a debilitated Avashta that goes with it. I don't want to be so bold as to call that a LAJJITAADI Avashta, but I do want to acknowledge that the very focus on a planet being exalted or in Mula Trikona, by its definition, focuses the astrologer's mind also on the lack of that. So that's my reasoning. And I also have it there on, why do I have it there on the far left? You know, why is it the first thing that I've brought to your attention? And the only thing that I can say about that is that I think when I set this out in my mind, I was quite reminded of hydrogen going here on the far left and helium going there on the far right, the first two elements in the periodic table. And hydrogen, the most unstable element, possibly, and helium, the most stable element, possibly. And so this contrast right there in the periodic table of everything that chemistry is about, everything that creation is about, which is the continuum between stability and instability and every variation of element in between that. So I think I liked the balance of having debilitation on one side and exaltation, Mula Trikona on the other side. So that is my reasoning for these, the first column on the left and the last column on the right. And once I put proud over there on the right, it seemed to me that I wanted to work my way from proud to debilitated, and I have chosen to do that. So moving from the right, I've got proud, then I've got delighted, then I've got thirsted and starved, then agitated, then shamed. And this is an area for debate. Have I put them in the right order? You might agree or you might disagree, so I look forward to your thoughts. And then other things that might be disconcerting if you know something about astrology. I have chosen as a convention that I'm going to put the name of the planet as the first word in the acronym of each particular LAJJITAADI Avashta. Now, this is controversial because most of the time you will hear something like the sun shaming Saturn or the sun delighting the moon. So normally, actually, we put the doer first and the planet in question last. So the sun agitating Mars. We, the astrologer, are looking at Mars and we're seeing that the sun is agitating Mars. So we normally say sun agitating Mars. Here in my LAJJITAADI Avashta periodic table, I've actually decided to put it the other way around. So I would say Mars is being agitated by Saturn, or Jupiter is being shamed by Mars, or Mercury is being delighted by the sun. So when you're looking at Fiona's periodic table of LAJJITAADI Avashtas, that first acronym, the SU, the MA, the JU, whatever the first two letters are, refer to the planet that you are interested in knowing about. And then we have a little acronym for the type of Avashta. So it could be SH for shamed, AG for agitated, ST for starved, DE for delighted, and I had to go EX for proud. So then the particular type of Avashta, and at the end, the third set of letters is the planet that is causing that avastha. So is doing the agitation, is doing the starving, is doing the delighting. So that is unconventional. It's the wrong way around for many of you. I apologize for that if it's very, very disconcerting. For me, I wanted that simplicity, that the planet I'm interested in is the first planet in the acronym. So then as I look across the row of the sun, that top row, I can see sun DB, sun shamed, sun agitated, sun starved, sun delighted, sun delighted, sun delighted, and sun exalted. So I know straight away I am looking at the sun. And this is something that was kind of important to me. This is what we were talking about with the being visual. The ability to see the whole picture at once is quite important. And that's because I do want to look both horizontally and vertically. I want to look at the sun. What is the sun like on that journey from exaltation to debilitation, and all of these various computations in between. So I wanted that horizontal row to read sun, 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 and the next one moon, 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 moon. So it was for that reason. Now, and then another feature that I want to point out is that once you get them all on the screen, you begin to see patterns of where there's lots of action and where there's spaces, black spaces, where there's nothing happening. So let's just look at some of that. Obviously, every planet can be proud and every planet can be debilitated. So those columns are absolutely rock solid, no spaces or gaps there. With shamed, also, there's a lot of shaming to go around. Unfortunately. And the only ways that planets can't be shamed is when they're shaming themselves. So the sun can't shame itself, Mars can't shame itself, and Saturn can't shame itself. So those are the black holes that are in the shamed columns. What we do have to remember is that even though there's a lot of shame to go around there, do remember that it's quite specific, the conditions that you need. So although there's an avastha for every single one, it's not like these are dropping out of the tree all the time. You got to get some pretty specific combinations. Okay, and then you can see that in agitated, if we look at that slightly orange third column, we notice, of course, that the sun gives a lot of agitation. So a pretty solid column of agitation from the sun there. It doesn't matter if you're friends with the sun or not, you're going to get some agitation. And then Ryan and I spent many an email going back and forth exactly about definitions of agitation. I have decided here to include the broadest definition of agitation, allowing for the most combinations possible, as to provide me with the notes of the most possible. And then I look forward to your input. And maybe I'll say more about that in a minute when we look at the next slide. But agitation, you can see, has got a very solid sun column and then a smattering of other combinations there. And notice, yeah, look, the sun only getting agitated by Saturn. So that whole Saturn situation there is balanced by the fact that right over here in starved and thirsted, you will notice that it's the Saturn column that's giving it's got a lot to give as far as starvation goes, and that's because starvation, one of the definitions is being located with Saturn. So there you go. You get a lot of starvation from Saturn, but you also notice that Saturn at the bottom row there in starved and thirsted gets a lot of starvation from others as well. So gives a lot, gets a lot. And then nice to know that delighted, there are many ways to be delighted, many different combinations, a lot of joy and friendship to be spread around the chart, and thank goodness for that. And you notice here that Jupiter is the one that has a lot to give, because Jupiter, he creates delight for whomever he's with. And, it's nice. You'll see down here in nearly the bottom right corner there, Saturn is a friend to Venus, so is providing some delight, at least to one other planet in the pack. So here is my visual representation of the LAJJITAADI AVASTHAS as a periodic table. I look forward to your feedback. I have also included there, as you notice, right on the far left, each planet. This is obviously where we read the sun is owns that whole first row. So the experience of the sun in various avasthas is all explained along the first row. The moon is the second row, everything along there. Look at the moon as we run along that line of the moon, how beautifully the moon escapes some of these things because it just doesn't have enemies, right? So it's helped greatly. Nice big black space in agitated and starved there. Mars is the third row, Mercury the fourth row, Jupiter the fifth, Venus sixth, and Saturn 7. And I've just popped in there as well for my notes. So really, I'm sharing with you my notes. This is what I find helpful. These numbers are the Shadbala scores required to be effective, to be able to do something. The sun needs 390, Shadbala, the moon 360, etc., all the way down. And that's important because each of these delights or attacks, from being starved, agitated, or shamed, they take or give away points, and the Shadbala is important from the planet in question, the one you're interested in knowing about, and also from the planet that's providing the support or the attack. So just thought I'd pop in there the numbers because in case I want to add up who's, are we in the black or are we in the red? Okay, so that is a run through of how this project became an opus, because what I've done is taken my notes and I've attached them to each of these boxes. So if you go ahead and you wanted to get these notes, you would then just click on each of these boxes and it would take you to a screen that explained some of the key features that you might see if that avastha is present in someone's life. And you saw those already at the beginning of the presentation when I shared the screenshots about delighted or starved. They were coming. That is the kind of thing that you would see. So this is not a textbook. This is not a well-researched, PhD thesis on LAJJITAADI avasthas. This is Fiona's notes, dot points that give me, they prompt me to be able to, in my mind, construct scenarios and think about who are the main players here, what are some of the patterns that I would see. Those are the notes that I'm sharing. So if you are interested in them, I am very hopeful that by the time you have this video, they will be up on my site in the shop, which if you saw the screenshot from before, there's not even a shop on my website at the moment. So, you are seeing this live. This is breaking news. Okay. Now, let's move on to when I thought I was doing a little video about the LAJJITAADI avasthas, and I took the opportunity to put them into this periodic table that I've always wanted to see. Being a visual learner, it prompted questions for me that when I took notes, I maybe hadn't asked that question because I couldn't see the link between that and that. Hence, Ryan and I swapped quite some emails, and I acknowledge very much Ryan's patience with my questions. And I have turned that into a bit of a decision tree here. And equally, just like you may like or not like, or find useful, not find useful, that periodic table, you may find this decision tree useful or not useful, and you may agree or disagree. And I am an apprentice, I am a student of astrology, and this is what I'm learning. And I look forward very much to your thoughts about it as well, with those people with more experience than I. But hopefully just delineating it, like articulating it here, helps us have exactly that conversation. So bear with me and see whether this is how you think the decision tree flows as well. So, is the planet, we're looking at this first line, LAJJITAADI avasthas decision tree, is the planet in its exaltation sign? If it's got a green arrow, you can see my little key over there in the top left. If it's got a green arrow, yes, it's in its exaltation sign, then lucky you, happy days, we're looking at a proud Avashta. If not, we've got the red arrow. Let's ask ourselves, is it in its Mula Trikona sign? Because keep in mind, they can be different. Yep, good trick for new players there. And if that's the case, yes, proud. So we're looking at the two ways that we can get a proud LAJJITAADI Avashta. If it's not, we've got this red arrow, next question we can ask ourselves is the planet in a natural friend sign? And if that's the case, we know we're looking at a delighted Avashta. If it's not the case, is the planet conjunct a natural friend that's not Saturn? And if so, it's delighted. If not, is it conjunct with Jupiter? Because that will also produce a delighted Avashta. And if not, is it being planetarily aspected by a natural friend? And here we go, delighted. So if we run through all of those scenarios, we've answered one or more of those questions, because remember there's many ways of different planets aspecting each other. We might see that the planet that we're interested in is actually delighted by several planets or several placements. And now, if not, is it in a natural enemy sign? Because then we know we're going towards, is this happening in a water sign? And if it is, we're looking at thirsted. If it's not, we're looking at starved. So, is it in a natural enemy sign, and is that happening in a water sign? If not, is it conjunct a natural enemy? If so, got the same scenario. Or, if not, is it conjunct Saturn? Because that's going to send you into this thirsted, starved territory. Or is it being planetarily aspected by a natural enemy, and that will send you also down this line of thirsted and starved? Okay, so we've looked at those steps of creating the starved Avashta. But if not, is it conjunct the sun? And we know what's going to happen there, because it's a straight line into being agitated. If not, is it conjunct a malefic, which is also a natural enemy? That'll send you into agitation. And is it, if not, is it being planetary aspected by a malefic, which is also a natural enemy? So you can see all this, these different ways of creating agitation. And then, if not, is it conjunct Saturn, Mars, or the Sun? And if so, is that happening in the 5th house? Because if it is, we're looking at a shamed Avashta. And if not, is it happening with a node? Is it happening with Rahu or Ketu? And that can happen in any house. And if that is the case, then we're straight into that shamed Avashta. And then a lucky last question, especially for Fiona's LAJJITAADI Avashta's periodic table, is it in its debilitation sign? And if so, we're looking at debilitated. So I'm hoping that this tree here has clearly articulated what I have understood as the flow of how these Avashtas are created. You might disagree with me, you might know more than I do, and you might be able to help me refine this, because I think this is very much a work in progress, but it's not until we can get it out there and look at it together that we can say, oh no, that arrow doesn't go there, or that question is the same as the other question. You can just merge those together. So I look forward to your thoughts, and I want to point out that these things are not mutually exclusive. So I've put in here an and, that something can be delighted and starved and agitated and shamed and unfortunately debilitated. We must, although I've kept them clear in the tree as if it's a if this then yes, and if not then that, so a yes no kind of on-off system. Actually, of course, these factors build on each other, and planets can be at the same time delighted by several planets, at the same time that they're being starved by several planets, or being shamed or agitated or being debilitated. So please keep an open mind that there are many factors that are impacting on the planet, and that's really what gives such a richness to everyone's life experience, that there are many good things and lucky breaks at the same time that there are many hard moments and adversity, that those things are true at the same time. Now, what I have done, also controversially, happy to get your feedback, I haven't put that and line for proud. Now, that's not actually because you can't be proud and delighted, but I've read, and I'm really interested in your thoughts, that a proud planet can really withstand quite a lot of this other stuff and just not feel it. And as I work with clients, I see that as being true and not true. For some people, they do have proud planet and it sails them through everything, even like a conjunction with a difficult planet. And for other people, they're like, no, I experience both of those at the same time. So I haven't included that yellow arrow just to remind me to have this exact conversation with you, but you might like to mentally put it in there yourself. All right, so drawing that all to a conclusion, I've been speaking to really two distinct parties here in this video today. One is those people coming from a professional area of not astrology, but of working with people and promoting change in someone's life, and may have no understanding, no previous exposure to astrology. And I'm also talking to people who study astrology, love the ins and outs of this stuff, and already have quite a good existing knowledge. So let's have a conclusion for both of you. I've gone ahead of myself there. Because each Avastha has a doer and a receiver, the patterns can be teased out. And this gives you different entry points into designing a strategic intervention, because you can look at the doer, you can look at the original planet, something about that interaction, you can look at the sign that it's happening in, you can look at the house that it's happening in, and these things mean that there's more finesse in the kind of strategies that we can come up with a client. So I find them really helpful, and the clients I work with also give me that feedback, that just being able to see it on the paper or on the screen is a relief and a step towards empowered acceptance in itself. So I encourage you, I hope that you will find them as useful as we have. Now, if you're an astrologer and a student of astrology, you love LAJJITAADI AVASTHAS as much as I do, I hope that you found my visual representation to be helpful, especially if you're a visual learner and you want to see those connections and patterns. You want to see where the holes are, where there's more, where there's less. You want to count up how many delighted Avasthas are there. Oh, how many starved are there? Oh, can Jupiter do this and this and this? And you want to have all of those networking kind of connections. I hope that you got something from that. As I said to you, the tool that I've designed from that is interactive. So you would be clicking on each of those periodic table squares and getting my notes, my dot points about how that might work. And you can go back and forth. So if you're thinking about someone who's got delighted and starved, or delighted, starved and shamed, or delighted and debilitated, and you want to flick back and forth between these, it's quite easy to do that. So it helps you be more dynamic in your diagnosis or in your scenarios that you're imagining, that will help the client understand the particular situation. And another thing about this interactive tool is that decision tree that we just went through. And the aim of that is to provide these clear pathways, is to create clarity. And in doing that, in creating clarity, I may be actually creating discussion. So yeah, I just wanted to say that it's a prototype, this visual tool, this interactive tool. It's my first cut of it. I'm hoping that the decision tree is clear. I've done my best to understand my notes and ask my questions. And by putting my understanding out there clearly, you might see holes in it that I can't see, or that I didn't ask the right questions, and I look forward to your feedback about that. And I hope it helps you also clarify for yourself the pathways that create these Avasthas. So if there's any confusion in your mind, maybe it creates clarity there as well. So I look forward to your input and discussions. And yes, you can, well, one day, hopefully soon, that will be in my shop, an electronic prototype that you can download. That's a PDF or a little animation, whichever both of them will be there, you'll get them together. And then you can try it out. And on the prototype, I have put in there the slide numbers. So if you do go ahead and purchase that and you do want to collaborate with me and get back to me and say, slide 14, I think that this and this and this, that's exactly why I have made it, to be a tool that you give me feedback about. Okay, so now all that is left is for me to thank you for your attention and for going on this journey with me. I hope that you have learned something about LAJJITAADI AVASTHAS. Maybe I have also created an interest. If you're from a profession where you help people, maybe I've created that interest that LAJJITAADI AVASTHAS can be quite useful and you want to go do a bit more digging. And definitely the tool that I have is one way to do that. But like I say, it's not a thesis that, it's not a book. It's not, I think there's like 50 to 80 pages of LAJJITAADI AVASTHAS in Ryan's Art and Science of Vedic Astrology, Volume 2. So if it has piqued your interest, you may want to go to a well detailed source, although of course you're welcome to have a look at my notes as well. And if you are an astrology student and fascinated by astrology, I hope you have gained something from it and that you might want to share with me your thoughts and what has been your experience. And this is my website for you to come and have a look at, and who knows what we'll be talking about in video 3, which will be the third and final installment in the 4th year apprenticeship program. So I hope that you will tune in next time for whatever topic it is that we get to talk about then. Thanks very much for your attention and see you all on the next video, or even better, see you on my website and maybe some of you with a reading or with a one-to-one session. All right, all the best and see you soon.